Yeah, okay. Angelica, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And can we see the speaker on the screen here? Okay, we see you. Hello, Angelica.
Oh, hello.
So we can hear you well. We see you
Oh, Lord.
well.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay. No, my glasses, right?
Perfect. Angelica, if when you do present, why do I have to be on the microphone?
Because
But for my computer,
it's the same.
I can't unmute my computer.
Yeah, you can.
So you will
I'll be
pass
right.
the.
I'll join 1 second.
Do you see the slides?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. You are where you were. You had
Hi, Angelica.
want to speak there?
Hello?
We can't use the mic.
Yeah. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from your coffee break, and thank you so much for joining us for the last session of the afternoon. We welcome you now to the session on land and water sustainability. My name is Justina Nichinska. I'll be your moderator. I am based at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I am also one of GEO Program Board co-chairs. Joining me is our panel of experts and GEO practitioners focused on land and water sustainability. With us, sorry, apologies. With us, we have Dr. Amos Kababa from the University of Energy and Natural Resources. We have Jipe Hugevin from the Food and Agriculture Organization. We have Dr. Natalie Lerma from GeoBlue Planet. And joining us virtually is Dr. Angelica Gutierrez and Dr. Bakun Farkudin. And here with us in the room is Mr. Titus Lachapo from the Geo Indigenous Alliance. And so we're really excited to have this session today because we have a new focus now in the work program and a new approach to really look within nexus areas, look for cohesion, look for synergies and opportunities to collaborate across sectors. And the area of land and water sustainability is really central to all the work that we do and really central to life on Earth. It's critical for environmental and human health, for social well-being, for economic development. And this intersection really promotes challenges, that we have to address facing climate change, population growth, and increasing urbanization. And this is really an area where you can tell that a multidisciplinary approach is absolutely critical to fully leverage the observation value chain to develop better strategies for land and water sustainability. Now, while we've had many successes in GEO working on both land and water issues, there's more that we can do in terms of integration and really provide a holistic approach to explore the interdependencies and connections and to develop more comprehensive and innovative programs in this nexus area for effective management and conservation strategies. So in this sense, this session will look to really present you with potential, opportunities for further collaboration, for how we can work in a more integrated manner across the whole program, how we can really show how these aligns with the post-2025 strategy, how we can identify collaborative opportunities for current activities, but also future activities in the work program. We can identify any existing gaps and challenges that we need to address in order to have a more cohesive work program and to deliver actionable information, the critical services that we need for our users and stakeholders. And with this, we're going to, as the outcome of this panel, we'd like to have everyone contribute ideas. We'll have an interactive section, and we really want to hear from everyone and our panelists on what actions can GEO take to develop innovative and integrative solutions that are most relevant to users and stakeholders in the area of land and water sustainability. So for the panel today, we're going to really, in terms of order, we're going to have a few flash presentations by our speakers. They'll answer two main questions. They'll have 6 minutes each for those. We'll do a follow-up round of questions after that so we can better understand their perspectives. And then we will also go to the Mentimeter round where you have the chance as the audience to provide your responses and to ask the audience any questions. And we'll close that out with key items and actions that should emerge from this panel. So with that, I'd like to actually present the first questions that we'll be asking our panelists. And so every panelist here will answer these 2 questions. What, from your perspective, is the most pressing issue in the context of land and water sustainability, and how is GEO uniquely positioned to address it? And also, how can we build holistic, inclusive partnerships to tackle these challenges from research, concept development, to impact for stakeholders and decision makers? And how do we work to bridge silos for a multidisciplinary approach? So with that, I'd like to welcome our first speaker to the podium, who's Dr. Amos Kababa. He's a senior lecturer and acting dean for international relations at the University of Energy and Natural Resources in Ghana. And he is also scientific committee member of GEO AquaWatch and co-chair for the GEO Land Degradation Neutrality Flagship. Welcome, Amos.
Good afternoon, good evening. I hope you can all hear me. Yes, in fact, I don't have slides to share because I intentionally decided that I'm not going to give some slides. I'm just going to speak to us because whatever I want to talk about, we can see it all around us. I want to start by saying that if you look at the post-2025 strategy, the emphasis is about F intelligence for all. Now, when you look at it carefully, you see that water and land play a critical role. Why do I say that? If I take a simple case like Ghana, where about 80% of our energy we need for electricity in order to support the infrastructure of driving, supporting the internet infrastructure and what have you, all this comes from hydropower. Now, if you do not have access to electricity, then it will be very difficult to do all of these things. So that is one case. Then at the same time, food security issue is a challenge. And in fact, I always like to use the story of chocolates because most of us are aligned with chocolates. And the issue of cocoa production, I think you have seen in one of the slides that is getting threatened seriously because of mining activities. And at the same time that we are having the mining activities, our water bodies are also polluted. In fact, currently now in Ghana, it's a huge issue. It's a huge political issue which is happening to see whether we may need to stop mining or what do we do. But these questions about water and land sustainability are issues we need to consider seriously because I'm happy there are people from the indigenous community that will also be talking, but there are issues about how people are connected to land and how people are connected to water resources. And how do we blend these two together in order to make a case? Now, in trying to address this issue, it is always very complicated because one, within GEO itself, we have several initiatives. As we are sitting here, I'm wearing the hat of GEO LDN, trying to say that, okay, let's try to restore, let's try to reverse, let's try to reuse. At the same time, maybe there are other groups that say, okay, we need economic growth, we need some change. How do we bring all these things together? I think there's a need to see how we can build synergies. I think that is very, very important. And I want to try to use a simple case. I will not say it's a perfect one because I have my friends, Joe Glenn is here. Hi. We have Digital F Africa is here. Hi. And the point is that water and land are the major resources that we have on our planet. So how do we bring them together? And I want to use the example, I think I just have 2 minutes, whereby in Ghana, we launched something that was very useful that brought together all the different stakeholders together, which was very useful through this, there is a national coordinating mechanism that is making a lot of impact. So we had a forum where we had our parliamentarians there, and from Digital F Africa, from Land Degradation Neutrality Flagship, we were able to showcase over time some of these maps versus food security issues. And the government, after looking at these maps, said that no, there is something wrong. We have to wake up to be able to do something. So I think one way, because of lack of time, is that for us to build our partnership, I think it is important we join our outputs together in one forum that we can talk to some of these policymakers, that we can talk to some of these donors, so that by so doing, we can be able to harness the power, and by so doing, we can be able to do something. In fact, the last one is, I remember in 2022, we also have Geo Blue Planet. We had one case You had your workshop in Ghana. We have these fisher folks. We have issue of coastal erosion issues, and there are also land degradation issues here. And by coming together as a team to organize a program, it make a lot of case for us. So I think in closing, what I would say is that in the context of developing countries, we must see how GEO can provide a transparent barometer in, first of all, evaluating these resources that we have for renewable energy, which is critical for them to know that they have this amount of renewable energy. That is very, very important. Next is to look at the trade-offs when it comes to our agriculture industry and when it comes to the creation of jobs. Once GEO can, as a convening power, can bring together the different entities for us to show our value, I think we'll be making a lot of impact on our community. So thank you very much.
So thank you very much for that presentation, Amos. And I think it was a great way to bring forward how GEO activities, you mentioned Digital Africa, GeoClam, in the context of national coordinating mechanisms in Ghana, and how we can really bring those services that the GEO community provides to country needs. And I think that was just a really good example of illustrating how we can do this in the area of land and water sustainability. Next, I would like to now welcome our next speaker to the session, and that, oops, I'm sorry. Sorry, all. Our next speaker, Mr. Jipe Hugevin, is an agricultural engineer who currently leads the water and data information team at the Food and Agriculture Organization. He's also the chief technical advisor of FAO's program on assessing water productivity through open access of remotely sensed derived data. Welcome, Jipe.
Thank you. Well, let's go ahead quickly. That's this one. Yeah. Okay. So first, I'd like to say a few words on the work that we are doing at FAO and what is the environment we are working in. So first, then I'll do that with a couple of quotes from flagship publications from FAO. So over 700 million people are still suffer from hunger, and that was coming from the State of Food Insecurity report of 2023. Those people, that number is now going down slightly, but it is still a huge amount of people. So there is a lot of effort is needed, and we are still very much behind reaching the Sustainable Development Goal 2, which is about zero hunger. Around 3.2 billion people, they live in agricultural areas that are very high to very high water, suffer from water scarcity or water shortages, and like droughts or just not enough water in general. And that comes from the State of Food and Agriculture report from 2020. The last two slides come from the State of Land and Water, and that is a publication from the Land and Water Division where I'm working on and of 2022. And that says that water demand by agriculture is projected to increase by 20 to 30% towards 2050, and that the total cropland from 2000 to 2019, total cropland increased with 63 million hectares, of which 85% of this area was irrigated. So what you can see is that both water and food is a problem over here, and water is in this case a very big problem, because what you can see over here in this graph is how the trends in cropland were over the last 50 years. So you see that relatively the cropland increased, not slightly, but when you look at and especially the rain-fed cropland remained more or less the same. So most of the additional cropland from the 50s until now comes from irrigation. So well, we did a very good job in general. I will not say FAO, but in general, we did a very good job in reducing the amount of land per person to produce food for people. So you, on the line, you see that that the amount of food produced doubled on the per hectare over the last 50 years. So there is an what needs to be done is, and that is then the most pressing issue, what I say currently, is the increasing the water productivity. So here you see, by increasing water productivity, you can do that by increasing first the yields, but you should also do that by reducing the amount of water that is needed. How to do that is extremely difficult. How to monitor is extremely difficult, but there satellite remote sensing can help. And we've done that already for quite a while, particularly by looking at biomass productivity, and but water productivity, so the amount of water that's being used, that remains difficult. So what FAO has been doing, we have setting up a project which is called Vapor, which is on water productivity specifically. And what we do over here is we satellite information we use and put by models, putting that into this into a database with information on evapotranspiration, biomass, precipitation, and other variables. That information that needs to be used by decision makers, and that is the last part over there. And that is also the most difficult part. We can reach, and we do reach already, the policymakers, researchers. Researchers make use of our tool a lot. I think also decision makers are using our tools more, and also water users associations, people who give who help farmers in increasing their productivity in their farming practices. Those people are using it, but the idea eventually is to get to what you see in this picture, is getting to the farmer, giving the right information to the farmer that the farmer can use to improve their agricultural practices. We have been doing that, and we've been working together with all kinds of institutions, and you see all the logos over there, but it remains a very big problem. So to me, that is where we are. And eventually, and it has been said in other sessions also, that one need to pay for these type of services. So we need to work eventually with the private sector. It would be very nice if the private sector could make money out of the data that we are providing. And we try to help them with it, but it remains extremely difficult to get there. So to me, those are the big challenges for us, to make sure that the information that is there, and it still can be improved, to make sure that it gets also to the end user. And thank you very much.
Jimmy, thank you very much for those remarks. I think you really highlight a critical issue for all of us: food security and managing water effectively, and how can we really leverage satellite data to derive that. And at the same time, an area where GEO can be best positioned to really help, which is how do you target partnerships with the private sector to get that data to the hands of users really need it. So thank you so much for that. We're now going to introduce our third speaker, Dr. Natalie Lerman, who is currently a CNAUS Marine Policy Fellow with GeoBlue Planet, and she has a background in offshore and coastal ecosystem engineering, as well as civil and environmental engineering. Welcome, Natalie.
Hi, thank you, everyone. This is one of the last sessions, but it's very important. We believe one of the most pressing issues in the context of water and land sustainability is the pollution crisis. So let me see if I can work this. There we go. So UNEP also recognizes that pollution is very important, and they have established global partnerships on source to sea pollution. And so what this source to sea pollution approach is it really just highlights the connectedness of pollution across sectors, disciplines, and Earth systems. And so this includes those terrestrial components, those atmospheric components, riverine, fresh, and marine water sources. And so they have three primary global partnerships right now. That's the plastic pollution and marine litter, known as GPML. There is also the nutrient management partnership, GPNM, and then also the wastewater. So at the request of member states through the UN Environment Assembly, UNEP guides identified pilot countries to develop evidence-based national action plans. And so to do this, UNEP uses this very convenient workflow to accelerate action on a country's strategic pollution intervention. And so that moves through inventories, looking at existing policies and national pollution sources, to policy design, so looking at those national and global indicators, toolboxes, and then finally into implementation. So assessing the effectiveness of those policies, and then also adjusting if it's needed. So at GeoBlue Planet, we do have a very broad scope of action and working groups. We work from anything like fisheries and aquaculture management to coastal and marine hazards. But this work also includes pollution. And so we've been working with UNEP since 2018. Specifically, our eutrophication working group has been delivering the Sustainable Development Goal 14.11a indicator, and our marine debris working group leads the community of practice on ocean monitoring for UNEP's GPML. That's the Marine Litter Global Partnership. And so what we're really focused on is assisting in the monitoring to support this workflow. So moving from diagnostic, so where are the pollutants, to the evidence-based policy intervention, so designing those policies, how can we make this monitoring actionable, and then finally implementation, so which this requires monitoring as well and evaluating the effectiveness of those policies and answering the question of what, if any, adjustments do we need to make. So, there's a question here about how can we build a holistic partnership to impact stakeholders? Well, the answer is that, as you may know, tackling the complexities of nutrient management is intrinsically holistic, or does intrinsically require a holistic response. It requires tapping into a wealth of knowledge across various sectors and Earth systems. The GEO initiatives that are present here today, along with their network of experts, can provide a potentially powerful foundation for building the inclusive partnership that is needed to drive meaningful change in nutrient management. And so as you can see from this picture here, we have a lot of urban sources of pollution, nutrient pollution, agricultural sources, as well as industrial and other atmospheric sources. And all of these feed into where GeoBlue Planet stands, which is in that water quality space, so inland, coastal, and offshore. So collaborating to support UNEP's GPNM is going to impact stakeholders because they are already connected to those relevant policymakers in the nutrient space. And so they've already identified 2 pilot countries. They're looking at Trinidad and Tobago and Sri Lanka. And they reached out to GeoBlue Planet, to our eutrophication working group, to lead the marine component of this global partnership. But holistic monitoring to fully inform policymakers requires cross-geo participation. So while GeoBlue Planet has a mandate to bring together expert communities to deliver nutrient monitoring over the ocean and bring this to UNEP across these workflow items, we really hope that the other GEO initiatives also value this work and will do the same. And invite their experts to support the nutrient monitoring in their respective areas. So we can bridge these gaps by providing holistic, harmonized atlas of nutrients that can be translated into actionable information and result in evidence-based policy intervention. And so events like this allow us to have those conversations. We can introduce those ideas, talk about them offline here in casual conversations. But we can also touch base online. And I know I've reached out to some of you folks, and don't worry, you are not off my radar. I am coming back for you after the symposium. I really think it's important that we continue those conversations after these events. But also, you know, we have to stress the importance of in-person events. And so GeoBlue Planet is inviting you folks, oh, I got to rush, guys. So to attend our workshop that we will be hosting in Paris. We're hoping for this to be a live event. So you can scan that QR code there and take a look-see, save it in your bookmarks. And when we start sending out those invites, be on the lookout and RSVP.
Natalie, thank you so much for that presentation and really for that call to action from the GEO community, how we can all work together to collaborate on developing a service on monitoring global marine nutrient pollution and really delivering that for key users, stakeholders through UNEP, but also to countries you mentioned, Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much. For our next speaker, I'd like to welcome Dr. Angelica Gutierrez, who is joining us remotely. Angelica, are you with us?
Yes, Justina. Good
Wonderful. Thank you
afternoon.
so much, Angelica. Angelica joins us from NOAA, and Angelica is well known to the GEO community as the co-leader of GeoGLOS, the Global Water Sustainability Initiative, as well as the culture of AmeriGeo. So with that, Angelica, over to you, please.
Thank you, Justina, and great pleasure to be here virtually with you all. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go dive in it today. Next, you need to click. So the first question was, okay, let's go with that. What is the most present issue? And for us, and you know, we have been talking about the triple planetary crisis. So definitely the primary issue is climate change. And the issue with climate change is that rising global temperatures are leading to extreme weather events like flood, droughts, heat waves, wildfires, which actually significantly impact food security, human health, as we were listening in the presentation before, ecosystems, and economies worldwide. And in that context, when we think of humanity, the most vulnerable populations are actually being disproportionately affected. So how is GEO positioned uniquely to address the effects of climate change? The solution must be timely and actionable information. So in the case of GeoGLOS, we provide reliable 15-day ensemble forecast for hydrology and 80 years of historical stream flow data for every river in the world. We have a 7 million river network that help us cover every nation and province worldwide. Thanks to our partnership with Amazon Web Services and their open data sponsorship program, this information is accessible to all without the need of subscription. This breakthrough in accessibility is not just significant, it is a game changer. The service is accessed over 1,100 times daily and is growing in number of users and in the number of locations where the service is used. So GEO at this moment is responding to the United Nations call to ensure early warning for all by 2027. Next, I want to use the analogy. Oh, okay, so you cut a piece that was important, but anyhow. So how can we build holistic, inclusive partnerships? Discussing with our technical team, we actually came up with these 4 ideas. Our recommendation is that from the universe of needs, all the needs that we have in this world, let's go and select 4, the ones 4 or 5, the ones that are going to have the most impact or the low-hanging fruits. The second recommendation is for the GeoWork program actually to be agile. And I think that we have at this moment about 40 different activities in the work program. So let's choose, 4, 5, 10. Let's reduce that 40 to a reasonable number. And let's do multidisciplinary activities rather than in silos. And hopefully everything else will fit under those main objectives. The third one, let's focus on solutions, not on the research. And within that idea, we need to balance the impact, the social impact, and the technical impact. We can have, no model is perfect. We all work with imperfect data. We all work with imperfect assumptions, but we need to have information, earth intelligence that is going to help our decision makers actually make informed decisions, not only by the data or by the model, but with a big group of information that we will collect. The fourth recommendation is let's leverage existing capabilities. There is many organizations around the world that through public funding have fund a lot of research. Very important developments are there. Let's look at what are the pieces that we are missing, and let's use that. On the right side of this slide, since the last year, we started looking at the social impact of GeoClose. And this is just an initial approach using the theory of change. So I think that will be my overall recommendation. We need to focus more on the social impact and look at our initiatives and all the activities from that perspective. Let's see if we have one more. Next. Yes. So I'm going to use this analogy. This is the boys in the movie Star, the Boys in the Boat movie Star from last year. For those who don't know the story, this was the team from the University of Washington and their quest to compete in the 1936 Summer Olympics. So if you look at the teammates of this GeoClose rowing team, you see not only public organizations, government organizations, commercial organizations, and we all have our independent missions, and we bring our capabilities without losing that independence. So what is clear for us is that we have a very well-defined target, which is the provision of the hydrological information worldwide. And in this partnership, every single contribution is equally important because by working together, we are able to provide a service. And it's this diversity what makes us unique and puts us in a continuous path for innovation. So this should not be only be the model of GeoClose. This should be the model for Geo in general, where not only the government organizations work together, but we should also bring commercial organizations, NGOs, and everybody who can contribute in any way to solve actually some of the problems that we have at this moment. Next. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. That's the next question. Thank you, Justina. Or do you want me to complete this one?
Oh, you can save that for a little later.
Okay, great.
But thank you so much, Angelica. It was a great presentation, and I think your points really resonated with what we've been talking about, even in the previous session on the post-2025 strategy implementation. And I love the example of everyone needing to row the boat together in equal partnership to really get the results, and the need to clearly communicate the socioeconomic impact of our activities. I think that's coming through clearly, as the future direction for GEO. So thank you so much for that. And please hold on in the session for follow-up questions. Thank you so much.
Sure.
With that, we are now going to move to our next speaker, Mr. Titus Latapo, who is co-founder of the Geo-Indigenous Alliance and managing director of the Sarah Foundation. He is a member of the Samburu tribe in Kenya and very much engaged in conservation efforts. Welcome, Titus.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. Yeah, so my name is Titus. I work for Geo-Indigenous Alliance and also Sarara Foundation. Sorry. Yeah, so just to start with, I'm speaking on behalf of indigenous communities, and indigenous communities are faced with a lot of water issues. Sometimes when you go to other areas, water is completely scarce. There is no water, and when you go to other areas, there is too much water, which is affecting them, either in terms of drought or in terms of floods. Just to mention a few water challenges or issues that we face as indigenous communities. We have a growing demand for both land and water. As you know that you can't separate water from land, because by the end of the day, water is comes from the land. So there is a lot of growing demand. You'll find that sometimes even development, like things like factories, things like or industries come maybe using a lot of water. And all this also is being brought by negative effect of climate change. There is a lot of water pollution, either brought by industries or maybe negligence by governments, making water unsafe for human consumption. And sometimes also, as I mentioned earlier, in other areas, water scarcity. There is completely no water available within the area. I already mentioned that with the Geo-Indigenous Alliance. So some of the things that we have done as Geo-Indigenous Alliance in trying to address some of the water issues. We organized a water summit in 2023, where communities or indigenous communities are given time to present their challenges to workers and others. And we are lucky because some of the communities identify their challenges. Where I come from, for example, there is a lot of issue of runoff whenever it rains. A lot of water disappears through floods, again causing a lot of issues and problems. So one of the solutions that was identified by that time is the use of sand dams. Use of sand dams to maybe to make sure that it holds water when it rains, and the water will keep on flowing over time, over the drought, over the dry period. And these are one of the things that maybe I can mention that what GEO could do is to assist the communities in using satellites to identify areas that are maybe ideal for sand dams, because not everywhere, sand dam cannot be located anywhere. It requires a dry riverbed, but again with rocks on both sides. So we can use satellite images to locate where those ones are located. Then again, also we had another hackathon where bringing again in ACAS, and also together with Geo ACOWASH Australia, we conducted another hackathon where the challenges and solutions are being identified. So the other thing that we try as Indigenous People Alliance is trying to bring in youth and students across universities to participate in these hackathons and develop solutions that are relevant to that. Then Finally, because of time, GEO can also assist a lot the indigenous communities to monitor in monitoring of drought and providing early warnings, possibly when there are drought or maybe there are strong winds or floods. They can also support in making sure that maybe funding the innovations that are being developed through these hackathons. Because as mentioned earlier, funding is critical to enable any innovation to take place. And also holistically, we need maybe to make sure that we, as GEO, we also build on all this already available. We have so many NGOs or organizations that have already done that, have done baseline surveys on all that we are doing. So if GEO can also assist in building on what is already available. Yeah, so otherwise, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Titus. And it's really great to see these examples of existing activities and the Water Summit and really identifying core needs for Indigenous groups and frankly, providing examples of how we can use satellite data to provide solutions and collaborate. We were going to originally have another speaker remotely, but I don't believe he's been able to join us due to travel restrictions. So we are now going to do a quick follow-up with the panelists to really better understand your insights. And I'm going to pose a question to each of you. You will have 2 minutes to provide an answer. So let me start with you, Amos. Looking at your presentation, what opportunities do you see in this thematic focus area of land and water sustainability coming from the Land Degradation Neutrality flagship perspective? What additional connections can be made between land degradation, food security, water management, and biodiversity?
All right, thank you very much. I think because the time is very short, I wasn't able to say all the things, but the philosophy of the flagship, LDN flagship, is that yes, it is important we have to develop. We recognize that developing countries will also want to industrialize just like other developed countries, but there is a need to have a trade-off. And I think that is what we want to advocate for. We need to have a trade-off at a certain time to ensure that we are not destroying most of our land. So in order to do that, the flagship is engaging on a number of steps. The first step is that we realize that there is the important need for us to dialogue. It's crucial for us to dialogue, to sit together in order for us to see what to do. So as a result, we started with Global Dialogue Forum, which we brought together country streams to really look at the issues of development vis-a-vis the land degradation issues in their country. This was very critical. And further, we also realized the fact that in organizing some of these these global dialogues, there was also an issue to really focus on regional dialogues. So that is also very crucial. And next year, hopefully, we want to also have a Pacific Dialogue Forum for the small island states that take into consideration of indigenous communities and the need for how they also want to see their development in that angle. Then the next aspect is that we are also looking at the fact that, you know, when we come here for this fora and we go through everything, at the end we go back. But we need institutions that are already doing some of these tasks, institutions that are close to the people. This is very, very important. So as a result, we are identifying help desks. For example, right now we have the RCMRD that is based in Kenya, that is a help desk that is trying to see how to distill some of these ideas that we have in trying to turn it to the local regional scale. And that is a process we are taking up for the rest of the other regional initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Amos. I mean, it's definitely critical that, we make this area most relevant and this focus area and the work you do in LDN most relevant to users, and adapting that regionally and nationally, I think is probably one of our bigger challenges. With that, I'm going to move to Jipe and really ask you in terms of, looking at how central food security is to both land and water sustainability. What information gaps do we need to target as the GEO community to ensure better connections and better information for decision makers?
Okay, thank you very much for this question. Rather than information gaps, I would say what we need is getting to the decision makers. We can reach decision makers on several levels. The decision makers on the national level and on the institutions, we can reach them already to some extent. Also, the level just below, the extension services in the work that we are doing. So the more local institutions we also reach, but those are people who have already who manage to have people working for them who can use the GEO information. But the most difficult is to get to the end users. And those are also decision makers. Those are the real decision makers who make the decision with agriculture on the field. When to irrigate, for example, when you're talking about water, what crop to grow. So, and these people, to get to these people, that has proven to be the most difficult. And I said it also earlier, and I will say it again, we have no solution to get there really, but what we would like them is to make sure that they see the added value of information, and they don't need to know that it comes from GEO, that is geospatial information, as long as they are going to use it. It is a little bit similar to farmers. Farmers, they have been using from the past weather forecast. They still use weather forecast, but the weather forecast, they came on the radio or on the television, and then they used that information. How they did not care so much how people were making those weather forecasts. They thought it was useful because it was to some extent reliable. We want to do the same thing. We want to make sure that people are using their apps on their smartphones or on their computers, for example, to get information that they need to make their decisions better. And to do that, there are several things that we have to make this type of tools to get to these people, but also we have to make sure that the information that we are giving is reliable, and that is very difficult. You cannot say to a farmer, well, this is more or less the reliability of the information that we are giving. It has to be useful for the end users, and those are also decision makers. And that is, to me, the biggest challenge that we are facing at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Jipe. I think you raised a very good point, and we touched on in the last panel, which is exactly that, getting to the end users and how do you communicate with the end user to really convey the value and make sure that it's available. But I think it's also a good challenge to the GEO community of how can we leverage our resources, our partnerships, and national coordinating mechanisms to help provide that information. So thank you very much for that. Natalie, nutrient pollution is such an excellent example of the direct connections between land and water management. My question to you really made a great call out to the GEO work program activities, but how would you see the contributions of other GEO work program activities contributing to this holistic nutrition monitoring system?
Yeah, I think that the way that we envision folks helping out is really just organizing, their own sectors, getting their expert networks together to deliver some of these monitoring and data needs, and really just kind of contributing to this workflow that UNEP has. And so I think that that's really up to them and their experts, what data they have available. Hopefully it's something that's already there and they can just translate it into something that's actionable for those pilot countries that we talked about, Trinidad and Tobago and Sri Lanka. But if not, if it's in their capacities to possibly extend what they have to be applicable here. And I think with the connecting across the sectors, I've already tried to reach out to some of you folks, and y'all have been really amazing. Y'all are awesome, wanting to help out. And I think, you know, events like this can help facilitate those conversations a little further. But also like thinking long-term, how are we going to continue those conversations online, and actually creating purposeful events to create strategic planning for the years to come so we can have a deliverable product.
Yeah, thank you very much for Natalie. And I think I really liked your message in your presentation when you talk about having a global pollution monitoring atlas and really, you know, thinking of the actionable information we can deliver. This is a great chance for all of us to identify these issues and really identify now at our next call for activities in the work program, ways we can build on that in the future and collaborate across different activities. Thank you so much. Angelica, next question is for you. Hope you can hear us okay. There you go,
Very good.
excellent. So the work of GeoGlows really touches on water sustainability in all areas we were discussing, especially through the information you provide through the Streamflow forecasting service. How would you envision connecting land degradation, food security, and water quality to the work of GeoGlows in the post-2025 work program?
Okay, so if the person can help me with my last slide. So I'm going to start before if they put the slide on. The next, no, before, yeah, that one. Thank you. Okay, so, you know, GeoGlows is not, the business model of GeoGlows is not to solve, we don't attempt to, as I said, to get our hands in everything. We, as I said before, we had a very clear objectives, and we are very focused on providing the best service and, you know, the best information. We are taking care of our users, getting into the communities. And so we are providing actionable information through the open data services and actually empowering many other communities, and we hope that we can empower also other geo activities so that they can actually develop new capabilities and solve, you know, their specific problems that they have. And I'm going to give examples here. So next, so we have already started. If you can hit, please, the next piece. We have already started, for example, in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, we provided the forecast, and a scientist from NASA actually went ahead and using satellite data, they put together a forecasting for water quality for Lake Atitlan. In terms of irrigation services, also, we have examples of communities in Ecuador, indigenous communities who have been using actually GeoGlows to develop irrigation systems. In terms of, if you hit next, in terms of hydropower and revenue generation, you can hit the whole thing. We have, you know, hydropower in Rwanda and also Honduras and other places where they are using, in Ecuador actually, they are using the information that GeoGlows provides to guarantee that the hydroelectric is producing the electricity that is needed, or to manage the amount of water that is in the reservoir, as it happens years ago in Honduras with hurricanes Hita and Iota. Also for flood insurance, we just received information that they are actually trying to use GeoGlows for insurance catastrophe models in real time. And finally, if you hit next to the end, to the next one, all the way to the end, you will hear later on, or I don't know if that already happened, in the symposium, you will see a presentation by Daniel Sanchez, who's the Subsecretary of Disaster Risk Management in Ecuador. So, I mean, with all these examples, again, we are here, we are providing the foundational information, and it's up to the users, hopefully from other initiatives, because water touches absolutely everything, every other initiative they all need information about water. We have that information. GEO already have a service who provides that information. And so we hope that everybody comes together and let us know, or simply go to the open web services that we have and look at the information that is there. We have through the GEO Knowledge Hub, everything, all our scripts, all our software, everything is open. So we hope to have many of you from other initiatives and flagships working with GeoGlows. Leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Angelica. It's great to see all the examples of how GeoGlows is currently being used and used across sectors. In addition to streamflow flood forecasting, you have the insurance sector and you have the emergency response. So that's definitely, a great way to build forward on our initiatives in the future, and even the work that was previously mentioned, even on water quality here. So great way to look forward to that activity next GEO work program. Titus, moving on to you for the next question. Angelica mentioned engaging with indigenous communities. You mentioned a couple of examples, and as you know, we're trying to work in the next work program, really co-develop solutions in the area of land and water sustainability across knowledge systems. How would you recommend we approach development of future activities in this focus areas that can really provide EO-based solutions to indigenous communities? But in turn, how can we also learn from indigenous communities to deliver a holistic understanding of Earth intelligence?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned earlier, it's very important that always while working with the indigenous communities, you understand the entry point. And we already have the Indigenous People Alliance that is working with the indigenous people. So I think the first thing is maybe to know what they need, and developing the tools that are required with them. We also have the indigenous hackathons that we normally organize annually, where indigenous communities participate in developing solutions for their own problems. And again, looking at the available funding. So I think working with us and also making sure that these hackathons becomes an annual event to develop solutions for those problems.
Thank you very much, Titus. And I think it's really great to, think of this also as the user engagement that we need. That was also mentioned by Jippy and others, and really, understanding what the communities need, how we can best provide what are some of those incremental steps we can take, like you said, the hackathons to better engage. Thank you so much for that. Many thanks to our panel for the initial round of questions. I know 2 minutes wasn't a lot of time, but we'll give you more to discuss further. And we'd actually like to move on now to an interactive portion with our audience. We'll have some questions posed to you on Mentimeter. So you will see those coming up. You have the QR code right there. Please feel free to scan and go to Mentimeter, and you'll have the opportunities to answer 3 questions. And so we'll probably spend about 10 minutes each on one, but please go to each one, answer that. And also feel free to ask the panel any questions in the meantime, raise your hand, provide any points if you'd like to add it to Mentimeter, but you also like to make a comment in the room. We absolutely welcome that and welcome your input on really what you see as the key priorities, what actions we can take, what gaps and challenges we need to address. And that's really the first question. Where are the gaps, opportunities, and greatest areas of need for land and water sustainability? And we'll as we wait for your answers to come in, are there any initial questions or thoughts for the panel? I know it's late in the afternoon, folks, but I promise this is your home stretch before a nice evening. Well, with that, we'll wait for the Mentimeter to come in, but let me also turn that to our panel members here. If there's any other points we haven't raised, but you've mentioned about various opportunities, ways to work together. Is there? So I'm seeing Erin Francis come in here. But what would you say to that? The integration of land and water holistically, GeoGLAM and GeoGLOS is a low-hanging fruit for sure. What can we do to really bring these areas together? Because that's always, I think, our challenge in Geo, right? We've been now looking to shift that work program model. And the reason we have this discussion is we're now thinking of thematic focus areas and really ways to make these think across disciplines, think across our silos, and think more holistically with that, and really, define what it means to not just work on our own specific activity, but really what it means, like Natalie said, how do we reach out to GeoGLOS and Blue Planet and AquaWatch and Digital Earth Africa and LDN and GeoGLAM, and how do we build this in the Geo-Indigenous Alliance? How do we build that into that partnership? So I'm saying human-derived water consumption is definitely one of the biggest challenge, and quantifying the requirements and available resources. Not including diverse people in decision-making, that's certainly important to have a variety of perspectives. And capacity to move with countries, yeah, that's definitely been an issue that's been coming up in terms of, the work we're looking at Geo. I think there's much work being done right now by the Geo Secretariat looking at national coordination mechanisms and also figuring out how we can leverage capacity building through that. I think, please go ahead, Deimos.
Yes. After sitting and listening to everybody here and sitting back with Geo now, we are almost 20 years. I think we have, there is some missing gap which we need to really work on. The missing gap is the fact that, you see, for most of the developing world, for them to be able to appreciate and use Earth intelligence for all, without electricity, it's not going to work. I think we must find within Geo how to bring in the energy sector to this, because this is very crucial. And I'm saying this because in Africa, most of the countries are now trying to adopt renewable energy technologies. So how can EO help governments to be able to know we are going wind or we are going solar? I think this is very crucial. Once we can demonstrate that to them, then they can put in the necessary investment. At least coming from Land Degradation Neutrality Flagship, I feel that, for example, if a mine site is already degraded, that could be a potential area for saying that, let us have some solar farm there. So, but it will require the EO to be able to say some of these things. And I also think once we bring in the energy sector, which is most cases private and sometimes government, they can bring in a lot of funding to support capacity building activities that we want to really do. So I think it's one of the things I have not really seen energy sector very prominent in our discussions, but I think going forward, we need to find a way for them to come in. And with that too, that is where I also see the areas of what we call sacred groves. Or, in Africa, there are some places that are reserved for prayer issues, for cultural issues. And sometimes in the access to providing access infrastructure for energy, these areas are destroyed. So there's a need to bring in the EO to see how we can have a trade-off in achieving this long-term vision. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so just in addition to that, while we talk about the issue of land and water, we also need to look at the issue of water and land policies and regulations to see whether they favor the local and indigenous communities. Because you'll see maybe in developing countries, governments are focused on water issue in towns or in cities, but forgetting where the local communities are. So the GEOs should also look at the opportunity of maybe looking at how the governments could review the land and water policy or regulations to support what the communities are doing.
Yeah, thank you both for that. Really important points about, bringing the communities, really understanding local needs and bringing in different sectors. I think Angelica's presentation actually touched on the energy sector, and you're right, we haven't talked about it as much. Really, how do we bring that in? Because that is a whole comprehensive understanding of how water, how energy needs are related, and how that turns into food security as well. So, Natalie, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I think there was somebody who put something about bringing stakeholders to the table. And I have to agree. I think a lot of times when we talk about communities and users, we think of it as a unidirectional communication stream. And I think earlier we had a speaker who was talking about bidirectional communication flows and really like valuing Indigenous and local community contributions to data. And then also kind of moving that away from a transactional form of engagement to something that's actually more, I guess, well, I don't know how to word that exactly, but basically, yeah, moving away from that transactional form of engagement and making it into something that's tangible for the people that they also benefit from. And so it's not just something that we can put on our flyers or our marketing, that we're working with these folks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, that's the whole value of actually being able to communicate, what we do in addition to a flyer, but it has to be tangible to the people involved. And you're right about that bidirectional flow. I think, Titus, that's also what we're talking about. We mean engaging with Indigenous communities now, and to really understand, it's not just a one-way conversation of how you need Earth observation data. It's also understanding your perspectives and how Indigenous knowledge can inform our decision-making and how we approach this in a more holistic sense. So it's definitely that need for that two-way communication early on and that mutual respect to build up on that. And I'm seeing more responses here. Don't focus on technology, focus on cross-sectoral needs of a common goal of demonstrating that a spatially defined region can be transformed to achieve sustainability. Yes, so absolutely looking at moving across sectors and really showing the impact, how that can actually achieve, the end goals for sustainability. Any other comments? Would anyone like to raise their hand and offer any additional information or comments? We're definitely seeing some great responses here, and a lot of focus on capacity building, a lot of focus on making sure that users are really heard. Farmers, Indigenous makers. And so, yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to see, when you mentioned bringing stakeholders to the table, we'll have to figure out how we reach those stakeholders to make sure we can bring them to the table. Jipe, would you like to?
Yes, I would like to add something to this, in the sense that we are talking about land and water sustainability, and land and water sustainability is often referred to as environmental sustainability. But we should not forget the socio-economic sustainability. I think Titus, you referred to it already, but many people, and especially smallholders, if you give them access to water, and then they will use more water. So you would say that is bad for environmental sustainability, but it gives them if they give them access to water, then it is possible that their income is much more sustainable, and that way they will remain on the remain farming and making farming more profitable and useful. So I think it is. We should not only focus on environmental sustainability, but also take always into consideration economic and social sustainability. Thank you.
That's great, thank you. And I think a holistic approach is really critical. I see you have a.
And I just want to add that I don't know how to put this right and straight. Land and water sustainability issue is so crucial for us that if we don't handle it well, there is not going to be well security. I think sometimes we forget about the security, because if people don't get things where they are, they move to another place. So migration issues will continue to be there. And once those things are there, of course, our well security becomes an issue. So it's a very central theme to see how all entities, all organizations must work together to ensure that this area linking with the social, economic security are maintained for us to have a peaceful world. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you both for that. And then, excellent point, JP, about the social sustainability, because you're right, we cannot take out the human factor without that, because obviously the need for food, the need for basic resources, the need for water and land is critical. And without taking in the human factor, we will not succeed with the rest of the ecosystem as well. So those, and you're right too about the security aspects of water, absolutely, with migration, with food scarcity, water security, those are, and especially given climate change, those are going to be more pressing challenges that we need to consider as we look at this. And Angelica, you have your hand up, please.
Your mic.
Trying to get it out. One of the pieces that, I'm thinking in terms of geo, in the questions that what are the gaps that we have? Only this last year, and I think that we are the first ones to do that. Only last year, we started looking into the economic benefit that GeoGlobe represent for the users. And so it has been a painful learning experience. We have been working with Ecuador, who has amazing information, socioeconomical data. And yet there are difficulties because the national level is different than the provincial and it's different than the local. So it's actually raising new questions for us, not in terms of hydrology, but in terms of how the institutions actually don't take that information. It seems like the investment, the information that they collect is not enough or is not properly coordinated to determine the cost of any investment. And this is for all kind of projects. So we have been working with the National Secretary of Disasters in Ecuador, with some of the provinces, other organizations, the Census Organization, UNGGIM Americas, and so forth. So that is opening a new can of worms for us, in the sense that Ecuador is one of the countries with the best information that we could have found, and yet we have not been able to really complete the mission that we were hoping to complete, and it was to say, this is the benefit of your investment. And so I think that for all the initiatives and flagships within GEO, that should be an element that should be actually mandatory to force us to think of whatever investment we are going to do in whatever area, we should consider what is the cost and what is the benefit of all the investments that we are doing, and how the solutions that we are providing, or that the innovation to bring in that economic piece.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for those points, Angelica. And I know that, in GEO, we certainly struggle a little bit with these questions, right? And that's a big question, actually, is how do you assess the value and the impact of observations? But you're right that without having that information, without doing the case studies like you're doing with Ecuador, it's hard for us to really clearly communicate that societal impact and that value. So how do we best do this? And I think one of the things we're looking at in the next work program, for instance, is these new GEO conveners, which are meant to be really advising the GEO community, providing best practices, and really hopefully guiding in some respect. And so we'd love to, for instance, have one on just that, socioeconomic benefits. How do we include this in the work program, and how we have a group of experts who can best advise other GEO activities on how to include these perspectives. And I don't know how folks who are currently in the GEO program, how you feel about having that kind of element, but I think it would definitely help to strengthen the work that we do in GEO. So.
Yeah, I think there's a need. We talk about a lot of things, but you see, we must also be aware that as humans, I see somebody, I like the person, I like to work with the person naturally. I see someone, I hate the person. It doesn't matter the idea is good or not. So I think our challenge is how to break those barriers and to work together. And one example is just what someone have written, that GeoGloss need to see how to partner with Digital Earth Africa, because they have also this water algorithm that they are using. And for example, GeoLDN need to really sit, at least we are starting to do that, because I look at him, he's a nice guy, GeoGlam, so it's easy for us to, but I think the issue is for us to understand that this planet we have is just one. We have no planet B. And hence, my survival, your survival depends on our cooperation. Finish. Without that, we cannot move forward.
Excellent points, Amos. And on that note, which is very critical, we'll actually go on to our next question, which focuses more on the actions we want to make. So specifically that, what possible future services or tools can GEO deliver for a well-integrated transformative GEO work program in the thematic area? And that's another Mentimeter question. So please feel free to provide your responses. And also feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to provide a comment in addition to the Mentimeter response. And with that, I can also, I think, ask our panel, because I think we've been speaking about just that, what are the future tools and services to deliver in this area? And I'm actually, sorry, I'm not seeing the full comment because of the Mentimeter logo, but let's see. It's opportunities in the fact that the concept of sustainable development is gradually taking root in people's minds, role by becoming an integral part of humans' universal understanding. Yes, and that's definitely another key issue. I think that we look at the GeoWork program, we have been focusing on the SDGs, and we're now looking at how to revamp that potentially in the future GeoWork program to advise GEO and really support how we can encourage sustainability and how can we really use EO to help meet those measures and those goals. With that, I see a few heads nodding and responses. Natalie, did you have? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to try to answer this. I don't think I have maybe as much experience as my fellow panelists may have. But I do think that there's really a need to centralize a lot of the data that we already do have. And so I think from the folks that I've spoken to, they have data here, data there. There's different agencies that may be holding that data. There's governmental or research institutions. And so I think if the power of GEO would be to centralize that information so that it is accessible to folks, and then also too so that we can see what other folks are doing and what data they are producing so that we can use it across sectors. I think it's really difficult to use information from another sector and try to feed that into some of our models if we really don't know what these other sectors are doing or what they have.
Yes, and services and tools. You can just imagine that we have several tools, several services. Then in fact, I think in this day and age, our challenge is too much information. So we don't know where are you going. For example, if we come to land degradation neutrality monitoring, there are several tools. Every country have their preference. Yes, the UNCCD have Trends.F, say countries use this, but you have tendency of some countries using other tools. So that is why for us within the flagship, we decided to codify it by saying that let us have what we call federated LDN toolbox, which means it is a set of tools that you can have access to based on your needs. Then you align the tool based on your national needs. Because why are we saying that? Because in some countries whereby land degradation is an issue, they want to measure that against the socio-economic development, very key. So that they see, okay, at what trade-off do we make? In some countries, so they feel that, okay, land degradation is not a problem. But we want to access this tool in addressing other environmental needs for our country. So I think it is time, maybe in the post-2025 strategy, because GEO already have been developing and working hard on the GEO Knowledge Hub that is supposed to be, let me call it the central pool in helping us to diffuse from this multitude of information that is there out there. So that if I'm interested to understand, okay, I want to use some data to understand where there should be wind farms. I go to the Geo Knowledge Hub, click, press on button, it gives me an idea. Or I am interested in doing irrigation. Like in Ghana now, the government want to expand because there's planting for food and jobs. They want to have as many dams for irrigation as much as possible. It should be possible, Geo, to provide that convenient portal. You click, you get the ideas. Without that, there is too much information. And when it now comes to distilling that to the indigenous community, there's even more confusion because one NGO will come and tell him, use this tool. Another one will come and say, use that tool. Then at their level, they get lost. So I think post should work hard for us to rebrand ourselves as the central pool for providing that guidance. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Well, what I think is important and what should be in this work program ground truth data on all kinds. So that for my particular work, that is it's on crops, knowing which crops are where, irrigation, where is it irrigated, where is it not irrigated. Also the amount of water in rivers, for example. We have all this type of information. You can get it from the map, you can get it out of it, but you have no idea how good it is often. Often here and there is one point, and especially in Africa, it is a problem that you have a huge continent, and then you have 5 points over the whole continent where you can where you can validate your data against, and that is a problem. And I think people do not think too much about it because it's rather boring to collect these ground truth data. It is not technologically advanced work. It is really handwork. People have to go there to find this type of data, but it is extremely important because all the models and all the eventual information depend on that. So that is what I think is extremely important. Furthermore, of course, it has been said earlier already, is open data, open APIs that people can get to the data, open source solution. That is also all very important. But to me, the main point is ground truth data for the moment.
And then Natalie.
Yeah, I can also see academic opportunities here, especially for indigenous communities and other local communities across the world, where GEO can, let's say, target students from developing countries to help them even analyze on the already available, as Professor said, there's a lot of data. There's a lot of data that need also to be analyzed, to be understood on local languages and others. So I can also see a lot of opportunities for students. I know GEO and others may have a bit of internship, but it should be strengthened. That service should be strengthened within GEO.
Yeah, I think I wanted to touch on something that Amos said and Jipe. So I think that Amos brought up a good point about all of the information that we have and how this could be confusing to communities. But I also think this ground truthing is a really interesting point with that, because I think that communities offer a really good opportunity to get that ground truthing. And so some of that confusion might be that our information doesn't align with their realities. And so they see this data and they're like, that's not what happened. And so we're like, yeah, but our model said that. So, whatever, and I think that dismissiveness of their knowledge and their realities, it doesn't happen purposefully. It just happens sometimes, by accident. But I think that adds to the confusion and also deteriorates the trust that those communities have with science.
Thank you all for that. I think those are great points, and I think you're all touching on the same perspective, which is the need for ground truthing, the need for local data, the need for that kind of indigenous knowledge and information, and really working together, trusting, each other, and also building in partnerships in order to get that kind of data, because I know we've struggled with that as the geo community, right? You actually need access to in situ data and information to do calibration, validation, a lot of work that cannot happen without it, essentially. So that's really critical, and I think I like, Amos, the way you're connecting it to the Genome Knowledge Hub, as well as, perspectives of how we can actually make that data accessible and interoperable. And I see perspectives here really on how to get, analysis ready data, how do we get interoperability, how do we make this, get it into the hands of users. With that, we'll move on to our last question for the panel, or at least for the audience in this interactive session, which is really how can we ensure inclusivity of approaches in various knowledge systems? So really touching on the last point almost, but really what can we do to include various perspectives and to have this kind of holistic approach as we look at land, water, and sustainability. So I wait for your responses and I welcome additional input and any thoughts from the panel they'd like to offer it. I think we already had some great perspectives on how we really work from essentially across the EO value chain. You look with the user all the way to the satellite system. I see, okay, great, excellent. Please, we can get you a microphone.
Just a very short comment related to what was presented by as validation data. So the first thing is that this probably means in situ data, and there are more users than just validation in Geo. We in the in situ subgroup in Geo, we want to make in situ data as one of the integral parts of the Geo data sets. And for that, we are preparing a Geo in situ strategy. So I just, invite you if you want to join us on Wednesday at 12, I believe it is. We will have the session, and that particular piece will be presented.
Thank you very much for that. I know the Institute data in the data working group has been working on that. And I think the next session we have, the ODAC workshop, we'll pretty much talk on and discuss some of these points. And so we very much welcome that and how we can tie that into all of Geo's data infrastructure and really access it. So thank you. That'll be a great connection to make. Thank you so much. Did I see another hand up in the audience? Oh, Angelica, thank you.
Well, thank you, Justina. Just with this last comment, I hope that the group, the C2 data, please connect with all the initiatives, because we will be, if you have any water information, we will be the first ones to, your first users. Also, just, listening to all the comments, I think that Geo has been working for several years with the Open Geospatial Consortium about the need to adopt standards for interoperability. And we actually talked, I think last year, about analysis ready data. And I think that is fundamental. When you have analysis that is ready data, people will come, the users will come. If you have really something that is unique, the users will come to you regardless of what information they have or they need. And I can testify of that, because we have experienced that when we come into countries and organizations and we say, hey, we have forecasting information and 80 years of data. People come to us and say, here is my in situ data, take it, because they know that we will use that to make the forecast even better. So it's like we are here discussing, the pieces of something that needs to be look at from a higher perspective. What are the things that we want to address as a whole, you know? We need to get out of our little boxes and just come and think, what are those big, grandiose objectives that we are going to challenge, to take on? And so, but I thank you all. I have been learning with all of the panelists, listening to the different visions and perspectives. So I'm very happy to be here with you, learning from you.
Thank you so much, Angelica. And we were definitely very glad you could join us virtually today to contribute to the panel. And now we will move to the last portion of our session, which is really a wrap-up question.
Sorry, can I just do
Yes, go
very
ahead. Real quick,
little,
yeah.
very little reply to that? Thank you, Angelica, for asking us to go to you as part of the Geo Work Plan activities, not just to you, but to the other ones. Let me just mention that we are preparing, and we have already something called GREX, that is an instrument to actually collect requirements for in situ data. I have a poster there in the entrance if you are interested, and it is designed as a mechanism to create dialogue between the in situ subgroup and the rest of the work plan.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll be sure to check that out, absolutely. So now actually, I'd just like to pose one final question for the panel, which is just have a couple of minutes to answer, but it's what is your main takeaway after listening to the panelists and the audience today in terms of opportunities for innovation? I'll start with Amos.
I think there is a lot of, in fact, there is a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of tools. We are aware of our challenges, our problems. We know that we can develop, but the missing link is that we have silos. So the takeaway is that we must see ourselves as cooperating along the different initiatives, along our different cultures, along our different religions, in trying to ensure that whatever piece of land is used wisely, whatever piece of water that is available on the land is used to ensure that at the end, our children's children can benefit from the hard work of GEO. Thank you.
I think this is a difficult question. When looking at the opportunities for innovation, often people think about technological innovation, and I think technologically, yeah, a lot is possible already, and we have all kind of open standards, and we have all kind of other standards. We have access to a huge amount of data. We can say, well, we would have access to more data, but for me, the real innovation is indeed making sure is probably more on an institutional level, making sure that these systems are talking to each other. Technologically, that is not so much of an issue, but still it's difficult. But I mean, there is no, I think it's not my field, but I think there is not a lot of innovation on a technologically necessary to make sure that all these data can talk to each other and that can be accessed. But what is necessary is probably more the institutional innovation, social innovation, to make sure that people are also willing to make the data that they are having accessible, and that they are more easy accessible, that they are interpreted in such a way that they can be used by the eventual end user, and for that. There is still innovation is needed, making sure that the end user, and then my perspective, mostly I'm referring often to farmers, then to make sure that the information is being made in such a way that it is useful for the end user.
Yeah, I think the biggest opportunities for innovation based on this conversation that we had, it has a lot to do with people and societies. And I think, as Jeppe said, there's really a lot of data out there already, but I think that we're possibly overlooking what contributions folks on the ground can make. And so I think that's a really good opportunity. They're already making those connections because, you know, that they're not binary. They're not just community members. They're folks that are farmers. They're doing different activities. They're using water. And so they are invested in all the silos that we have here. And so I think the big takeaway here, I have to agree with Amos, is breaking down those silos for the communities that we're serving.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I think for me, I think my takeaway is that solutions are with us, and we already have opportunities to solve them. Where we come from, or most of the indigenous communities, issues that are affecting them, they normally say, this is normal. When drought comes, they say it normally comes and goes. When floods come, it's normal. But I think it's high time that we look for sustainable solutions or maybe permanent solutions to address those problems. Though sometimes they're natural, but there are ways in which we can jointly address them.
Thank you so much, Titus. And Angelica, if you're still on the line, your thoughts in terms of main takeaway after the session?
Trying to unmute again. I don't think that we are, well, I think that we are going to be surprised of, you know, if we have had issues in silence, we are going to be surprised when we start working together, and we will realize that perhaps what we thought that we had a lot of data probably will not be the case when we start working together. So new challenges are going to come out of that, but I think that we have no choice than to start working in a multidisciplinary form within GEO.
Thank you very much for that, Angelica, and all the panelists, really, for all your input and perspective here. It's been a great session. I just want to think of a few, key takeaways that we identified, and I think there was a lot of synergy between what all of you talked about, really. And I think many of you really touched on the need for clear communication and connecting with users, the value of the ground truthing data, and really the impact of balancing our social systems with our data management and environmental monitoring efforts, and to really understand how we can better communicate, how we can better deliver certain services. And as you said, it's not just about, it's really not about just the data, it's about the social systems. And then understand within that, to Angelica's last point, is how do we now work together across these different silos that we previously had? And even though these are challenging conversations, where do we start to identify those opportunities and really look at, do we have data gaps in this area, for instance? Is it really interoperable? How can we share that data, make it more accessible, and how we get it to the people who really need it most in terms of our key stakeholders and communities? And so I think that was a shared message across our entire panel. So thank you so much. We frankly heard it all day today. So I think this is very much the future for post-2025 in terms of land and water sustainability, but really across GEO. And so thank you very much for your perspectives. I think with that, we'll be taking all of this input as we look at developing the post-2025 implementation plan and really looking at now developing the future work program. And I encourage everyone here to please submit those kinds of innovative proposals, talk to one another, exchange ideas as we look at developing the transformative work programs that we're trying to identify. With that, thank you so much. I believe this is the end of our session and the end of the day. So thank you for your participation, and we'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.